So we're not even 3 months into 2024, and I've already done something that I promised myself and quite a few other people that I wouldn't do, which is add another vehicle to the fleet. Now, I'll back things up a bit. Circumstances change and things come up that are unexpected, and that happens a lot when you're talking about automotive things. So out of the 4 cars, we'll start off with the Volvo, which is my daily and sort of all-rounder vehicle that I like to take on the track and on the hills, as you do, because it's an all-rounder. I'm pretty sure that car, now I've been in denial about it for a while, but I'm pretty sure it's developed head gasket issues. So I think it's actually had those head gasket issues for quite a while. There was a thermostat issue with it where the one that was put in there originally was replaced and it wasn't opening as much as I expected. I negated that problem by putting a lower temp thermostat in it and doing a full coolant flush. I flow tested it, there was no issues with that. But it's improved. Definitely it's improved on daily driving. The temperatures are, always double digits. As soon as you start to lean on it, whether it be in the hills or on the track, it really shoots up quickly. Like I went on a spirited drive the other week, sort of up an incline, not a crazy sort of steep incline, out in sort of country Victoria, and I saw temperatures of 111 for the coolant, which is just, something's not right there, especially when you've got an 82-degree thermostat. Furthermore, there appears to be evidence of carbon deposits in the coolant reservoir. The coolant level has dropped a little bit as well, and there is some whiting on the straps of the spark plugs, which can indicate coolant burning on there. So, I mean, it would explain everything. The way that the temperature rises on that car, when you just start to lean on it a little bit, it kind of starts to make sense. So I can't have fun in that car. I can daily drive it, absolutely, but I can't have fun in it until the head gasket issue is fixed. So that's not something that I'm sort of financially prioritizing at the moment, so I put that aside for 1 second. Then we've got the Alto, which is still in pieces. I started pulling that apart earlier this year, pretty much at the start of this year, and then quickly discovered that the turbo manifold that I got wasn't going to work. It's from a slightly newer model, Lapin HE21S K car, which is still the same engine, but they've changed things slightly on it, so the ports didn't line up. And anyway, I wanted to do it right, so I only just received the correct manifold earlier this week, or last week I should say, but that's a big sort of thing. But I've got everything I need for that now. I need a couple of solid days, but even then it's still got a lot of work before it gets on the road and is going to be ready to actually comfortably take in the hills and on the track. And then I've got the S5, which, look, I'm not going to get into details at the moment. I thought about getting rid of that car, and then I decided that was a terrible idea, but I can't keep it because it's a coupe and it's a bit too big for the hills. But look, it's going to hang around, but it's not going to completely hang around. I can't go into details, but you'll see later on what the plan is for that thing. And then I suppose most sort of relevant is the Citroen, which is behind me at the moment, which, look, it was fine. Obviously, I'm going to be doing an engine swap in it, but the clutch release bearing did fully exit the chat several weeks ago, to the point where the noise that it started making was this constant squeal, which got louder and louder. And then I sort of left it aside, and even just putting it in the backyard where it is now, you can smell metal burning, and there was smoke coming from the gearbox. So not a good idea to do that. And it's not really something I want to spend money to get fixed, because the whole gearbox is going to come off, and I have to do clutch and that at the same time, and probably flywheel. And what's the point of doing that if the thing's getting an engine swap in the next few months? The 2.2 litre from the Peugeot donor is going in it, and the 6-speed manual. So it doesn't make sense to spend money on that. It's just not economically viable. So what I have done to get around the problem is add another car to the fleet temporarily. I cannot stress that word enough. This is not staying around for any more than 5-6 months, maybe not even, but depending on how long the engine swap takes in the Citroen, then it will sort of leave the fleet at that point. I'll move it on. But in the interim, what I have done is gone and bought this. Das Auto. So this is what I've bought, a 2006 4th generation VW Polo diesel, and when brand new nearly 20 years ago, apparently these things put out a whopping 74 kilowatts at the crank and about 240 newton meters of torque from its 8-valve 1.9 litre turbo diesel 4-cylinder engine. It's got a 5-speed manual box, which is the only transmission option available in a 4th gen Polo with this engine. That's a good thing though. And all that tractor power goes exclusively to the front wheels. Believe it or not, this car has travelled in excess of 400,000 kilometres in its 18 or so years on Aussie roads, but given the reputation of these 1.9 TDI engines as being arguably the strongest diesel engine that Volkswagen Group ever produced, this sort of mileage doesn't concern me at all, really. This is solidified even more by the fact that in Europe, Skoda Octavias, Audi A4s, early Golfs and heaps of other VW Group cars used as taxis with this engine have been reported to run nearly 1 million kilometres without a rebuild, which is pretty astonishing. Obviously, having done the good part of 500,000 kilometres, it's not exactly in concourse condition. There's random bits of minor panel damage, significant paint oxidisation towards the front end, random stickers everywhere from the previous owner's kids, the left-hand side headlight mounting points and bulb holders are completely shagged, the dampers I don't think have ever been changed, and the front pads are pretty much down to the backing plates. That being said, it doesn't leak a drop of any automotive fluid whatsoever, the aircon and the heater work perfectly, and despite that aforementioned odometer reading, it seems to drive pretty damn well. Now look, normally when you buy a car that's got 400 and something thousand Ks on it, you don't expect it to be very good, but in the case of this Polo, it's amazing. Like, I would think, like if someone gave this to me, if it was cleaner and it didn't have faded paint and all that sort of thing, judging by the interior and the way it drives and how tight it feels for the age, I'd say it's done 150, 200 worst. Like I've driven cars that have got less than 200,000 Ks that drive a lot worse than what this does. Now, with most VWs of this era that aren't sort of your top end models, most of them are made in South Africa, not in Germany. And this is one of those examples. This is actually a South African produced VW that's from the mid 2000s. And they're not known for their electrical reliability and a few other things. But in the case of this one, it's actually pretty damn faultless. The only thing that really I can see so far that's wrong with it electrically, or it's not even really an electrical problem, this is more of a, I suppose, just a typical door and window VW problem that they have at this age, is the front passenger door doesn't open from the inside, but it opens from the outside fine. But the central locking works, all the other electrics work, the headlights work, there's not even a bulb out on it, which is astonishing. The radio works, all the buttons seem to work, the mirrors work. It's even got cruise control as well, which is pretty cool. I didn't think VW at this sort of spec in a Polo would have something like cruise control, especially not for a manual one at this age. So, you know, and it works. I'm doing 60 Ks at the moment, I've just set it and it works. But yeah, it's honestly really hard to fault. When I first test drove it, I was expecting it to just drive like utter shit, but it doesn't. I mean, this honestly feels about as tight as the Citroen does with 100,000 Ks on it. The Citroen obviously is a bit more focused and it turns better and everything like that, and it's a bit more alive. This is a bit dull feeling, but it's in completely stock form and it's, you know, it's on 14-inch tyres that I don't even know how old they are, but they are quite noisy, so I'm guessing they're probably ready for the bin. There's still got heaps of tread on them though, but yeah, they're not great tyres, let's be honest. But look, it turns, it goes around corners alright, like, you know, handles there okay. So the goal with this car, really what I intend to do with it, is modify it in a way that's going to be cheap and effective. So I want to have this as my temporary fun car, something that I can just, even daily if I want, just, you know, it'd be a really good daily because it is bloody good on fuel. You can chuck 50, 60 bucks of diesel in this thing and get 800 Ks to a tank. The 1.9 TDIs are just notorious for that. Like the gearbox feels tight. I think the clutch release bearing is a little bit warm because it does sort of feel, it has got that sort of grind to it during the pedal travel, which is consistent with that sort of thing. But I mean, the gearbox is, man, it's really like very, very tight. I'm sure there's no way those shifter bushings are original. Now, of course, being an oldish VW, of course it had an engine light on when I bought it. When I first test drove it, the engine light was on, but it drove fine. Like it wasn't in limp mode or anything like that, or it didn't feel it anyway. And I plugged in the VCDS scanner last night and it showed up with the fuel temp sensor saying open or short to plus, something like that. Turns out that the connector going into the fuel temp sensor, one of the wires was broken off it. So I quickly fixed that up, cleared the code, and it hasn't come back. Does not throw a single engine code, which is astonishing. But these engines are just fantastic. Diesels aren't really renowned for being good cars for fun, but honestly, you put them in a small little hatchback like this, and you give it a manual box and some okay steering, and it's really, really good fun. The torque is what makes it fun, to be honest. The power delivery with one of these diesel engines couldn't be more different than what it is in, say, like the Citroen, where you've got to rev the absolute shit out of it to get anywhere. This is completely opposite. Like at the moment, I'm doing, you know, 1200 RPM in fourth at 50 Ks an hour, foot down, and it just picks up. There you go, I'm already at 70 Ks an hour. Without even trying hard, which is awesome. I love that. Torque is amazing. When you've grown up with V8s like I have, you will appreciate torque. So it only makes 74 kilowatts, but it has 240 newton meters of torque or thereabouts in stock form, which is give or take about 100 more newton meters than what the Citroen's got. Now, I know the Citroen weighs a little bit less than this. I think the Citroen weighs about 100 kilos less. But this feels, honestly, as every bit quick, if not quicker. Obviously, after 4,000 RPM, it just dies in the arse, as you would expect with a diesel. But yeah, from nothing, basically, to 4 grand, man, it picks up. It's awesome. You know, 2,000 RPM in third, give it, and oh yeah, look at that. That's awesome. What a fantastic little car this is. So what I'm gonna do with this is put some cheap mods into it, and when I say cheap, I mean cheap. Like, this thing is gonna be done on a budget. It's gonna be done the way I did things in my 20s, which is completely opposite to how it is now, but basically in my 20s, the way I modded cars was, all right, is it a cheap mod? Will it work? All right, that'll do. And just send it. That's what I'm gonna do with this thing effectively. So I'm gonna do some mods to it, I'm gonna do some basic servicing. In April, there is a Winton Fun Day coming up. So I wanna see if I can get this car, this diesel commuter hatchback, I wanna see if I can get this quick around Winton than what I did with the Citroen when I took it. Now in that, I did a very, very low 150. I reckon, you know, it would have done a 149 that day. So I'm gonna see if I can get this thing around Winton in 1 minute 49, and I'll be bloody pleased if it does, I tell you. It'll just be cool, because no one's going to expect a diesel hatchback on a track. I don't think. It's not really common. It's certainly not in Australia, it isn't anyway. But I think it's gonna ruffle a few feathers, let's put it that way. All right, and these are the mods that I've bought for it. Now, I have gone a little bit crazy in the week leading up to this, because I went to go look at it on the Monday and then I picked it up on the Saturday, so I had sort of a whole week of, you know, buying stuff off the internet for it, as you do. But anyway, boring stuff first. Oil and coolant. I just got some Castrol Edge because I normally would use Penrite, but this was on sale, so cheaper, again, emphasizing that. Some 50/50 premixed red coolant. The coolant that's in here, it doesn't look quite red. It looks like it has been topped up with maybe distilled water at some point, I don't know, but either way, I'm going to do a full coolant flush and put brand new coolant in it, because you should always do that anyway if it doesn't look great. Also going to put a new thermostat. So this is a Dayco DT36A. Now, it's actually not specifically the right thermostat for this engine. The only thing I can see between this and the correct one for it is this is a little bit lower opening temp. So this opens up at 82 degrees rather than the traditional 89, which would be in this car from factory. This one is actually opening up too early anyway. That I have seen that happen on these diesel engines before, where the thermostat gets a bit lazy and opens up early, but the temp gauge basically never really sits quite at 90. So it's kind of the opposite to the Volvo, it just doesn't get hot enough, whereas the Volvo just cooks itself a lot of the time. So I'm kind of jealous of it, to be honest, in that regard. But anyway, no head gasket problems here. So that's sort of the boring stuff. Also, I've got just a replacement tail light on the passenger side, because the one that's in it is water. There is a bit of moisture in it, and I just don't want them to be able to pick up on that when I go get it roadworthy. So I'll be changing that. I also need to get a new headlight for the front, because as you can see, there's a bit of wobble in that one. The actual mounting tab is broken on the top, so I have temporarily, in case I can't get another replacement headlight, I bought some JB weld to weld that up, and then I'll see how I can sort of fix it up from the bottom. I'm not quite sure where it mounts to the bottom. I've got to take the whole front bar off to get the headlights out on these things, because they're a pain in the ass in that regard. But anyway, here's what it is. So there's that. And then brakes. So again, these are just some Protex OEM replacement rotors for both front and back. And the pads I actually haven't completely cheaped out on. So these are Brembo Prime Ceramic brake pads. I haven't even opened the box actually on these, because I only picked them up yesterday morning, but yeah, ceramic pads as it turns out. So again, when you're taking on a track, you do want some okay brakes, at least not the cheapest sort of thing. And these look pretty good. They're nice and chunky, and I've had ceramic pads before and they were usually pretty good, apart from EBC red stuff, which I'll never use ever again, but I digress. So I got that, and some Brembo rear pads as well. This is mainly, I'm doing this sort of because the front rotors have got quite a lip on them, and then there's not much front pad left. The rears, the rotors look okay, but the pads don't look fantastic, so I thought we'll just do that. I haven't got rear rotors. I thought for a second actually I had rear rotors here, but it's been a long day. These are just 2 front rotors, so that's all good. The rear rotors on this are fine. There's no real lip on them, so that should be all sweet. I've also bought some new strut top mounts for this, so the bush and the bearing for the front, either side. I've got this. Now this I'm not strictly going to put this on, but I'm also going to get, there is something that actually hasn't arrived yet that I haven't picked up from Amazon, which is basically one of those chip tuning boxes. Now I've never really used one of them before, but they're quite common in the UK for use on these. It's basically just a remat box that plugs in somewhere in between the fuel temp sensor and something else. I haven't looked that extensively into it, but basically it just gives you a bit more boost, a bit more torque, changes the fuel mapping or whatever, and it's supposed to actually give you a little bit more power. It's like 30% more torque or whatever they said, which is pretty cool. It's already not the slowest thing in the world, so any extra power is going to be good, but obviously with running more boost comes usually higher intake temps or charge air temps. So these run a tiny little side mount intercooler which sort of sits behind here, and I found this off Facebook Marketplace. It's actually a return flow Chinese intercooler to suit an R33 Skyline, like a GDST or something like that. So it's going to be completely custom the way I mount it, but I just sort of maybe want to put it under there because front mount generally works a lot better than side mount from what I've seen in the past. And because the existing piping, both the inlet and outlet, are on this side, I need it to be a return flow. It's just easier. So I haven't bought any pipe work for that yet. That's going to be later on stuff. I just want to get stuff that is going to get it through roadworthy first and just get it in a presentable condition. Then I'll go, you know, that, maybe chuck a pod filter on there, who knows, we'll go from there. And then we've got some max speeding rod coilovers. Now, I've had max speeding rod coilovers before in a newer Audi A3 that I had as a daily a few years back, and to be perfectly honest, I hated them. They were really uncomfortable. I mean, they worked, but they were ridiculously uncomfortable. I paid like under $300 for them at the time and then wondered why they were so cheap. And then when I hit the first bump, I immediately found out why. That being said, these ones do have a helper spring on them, which generally is a bit better. And I think the coils look maybe a little bit better as well compared to what the ones I had in that are. And we'll see how it goes. But look, they're cheap on a track that's got a smooth surface. It doesn't really matter too much anyway. It's going to be probably quite firm, but I'm not going to have it slammed. And these are going to be, this is going to be on slightly higher profile tyres than what I had on the A3 with the same sort of coilovers on it. And it's a completely different chassis anyway, so it's not really too comparable. But I'm going to basically set these as at the highest ride point that they are. These offer something like 35 to 70 mil lowering, so I'm going to set it at the highest point, which is 35 mil, which translates to about 1.5 inch. So that means it shouldn't affect the ride too badly. These cheap coilovers generally work better, not great, but better when they're at their highest level rather than when they're at their lowest level. So look, it's still going to be uncomfortable, of course, compared to proper coilovers, but again, they're cheap. I'm not going to obviously reveal any of the pricing yet. I'll do all that down the track, but trust me, they're cheap, considering. So there's that. That's obviously a front and rear set. And then I got some wheels and tyres. So at the moment, this is on just some 14-inch Steelies, I think they're 14 by 5.5, and they run a 185/60 14 tyre. These are some 16 by 6.5-inch wheels from a VW Bora 4Motion. They're actually the OEM wheels that come off that. Same stud pattern of 5x100. The Bora, which is basically a Golf Mark IV chassis, and the Polo, the Mark IV Polo, share the same stud pattern, which is good, and the same set of bore. So these will just go straight on. The offset will be pretty much about right as well. And these, I've got some, these tyres are just, I can't believe the name of them, Power Track Racing Pro. So I got these off Tyre Ruler, again, cheap, but they are brand new. The tread pattern actually looks okay. The tread wears 320, which is about the same as, say, Michelin Pilot Sport 5, but again, it's a pretty cheap, nasty Chinese tyre, so I'm not expecting it to be fantastic, but it's going to be better than what's on there now, that's for sure, and they're brand new. So these are a 205/45/16. So again, the profile isn't really affected too much. Again, it's a 60 profile at the moment, but because this is a 205 rather than a 185 on relatively the same width of wheel, the profile kind of, or the sidewall kind of remains the same. So looking forward to having them on there. I think it'll drive a lot better with these compared to the tyres that are on there, the 14s, because God knows how old they are, but they're probably like 8 years old or something like that. But anyway, got a full set of these, got them really, really cheap. May spray them up, may leave them that color. I've got some anodized dark gray spray, so I may spray them up if I get some time, who knows. But that's basically the plan. So I'm going to put all this on there. I think first, obviously, I'm going to do the brakes, coilovers, do the engine servicing stuff. So obviously drop the oil, put a new filter in it, drop the coolant, put a new thermostat, put new coolant in there, and go from there. And then after I get it roadworthy, I'll start mucking around with stuff that's not really what you'd consider roadworthy, which is the front mount and whatever else. So this may or may not work, like I said, this front mount, but I've got it anyway. So we'll try and make it work. But the point is, all this was really, really cheap. So like I said, the plan is basically do all these mods, enjoy it for 4 to 6 months whilst the other cars aren't really what I'd call in a sendable condition. And then, yeah, enjoy it in some hill runs, some track days. And I'm going to see if I can beat that Citroen when I took that to Winton. We'll see if I can get it quicker than a 149 or thereabouts. Again, I'm not expecting miracles because it is a diesel hatchback that has 400,000 kilometers on it, but it's actually a pretty tight car and it kind of goes good. So I don't know, I'm 50-50 on it. We'll see how it goes. But anyway, that's all from me for now. So next episode will be me working on this. I've got to give it a proper clean, and both inside and out, because it's pretty manky inside and it smells terrible. That's why I've got some black ice spray as well. So I don't know what has happened in there, but I think it was smoked in at one point in its life as well, because I found some cigarette butts in there. It's never great. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time. Take care.